Hello everyone, you're on the Manhwa Vibes channel. Are you ready? Let's go. Hee-won doesn't want to go home because she thinks she will be sickened by the smells of food again. She decides that the right thing to do is to stay in a hotel that night. Do-young supported her decision and will stay with her as well. All he wants is to be with Hee-won anyway. Do-jun suggests that Hee-won take a walk around the city at night. She agrees, but first she has to go in to get a pair of matching shoes for Hee-won. He's glad Hee-won agreed. Do-jun took her by the hand. She really likes the care that Do-young shows her. Hee-won snuggles up to Do-young. He thought it was because she was afraid that he would be arrested. But it's not. Hee-won just doesn't want something like this to happen again. Hee-won thought Do-young was cold and asked where his coat was. He replied that his heart is warm enough, so the cold doesn't matter to him. How cute they are, so embarrassed. Hee-won smiled and then laughed. Do-jun wondered about that. She reflects on the fact that Do-jun has really high standards. Why all of a sudden? Do-jun replied. Hee-won thinks that Mi-jun and Ha-in are both great women. The bottom line is that Do-jun is surrounded by people like these girls, but he's not even interested in them. This makes Hee-won wonder if he has ever found a truly beautiful woman for himself. Of course he has, Do-jun answered. Hee-won wondered and asked who she was. She really wondered if she knew this girl. Do-jun decided to briefly tell her about her. This girl is sexy and has high standards. You'd think she's shy, but she's also sharp and witty. She's also a little clumsy, but he thinks she's really charming. Do-jun clarified that black was very much to her liking. Hee-won was wary of who that might be. A sexy and black clothes. Hee-won doesn't even know what to answer Do-young. She was offended because Do-jun likes girls like that. Do-young probably should have said right away that he meant Hee-won. And now she's offended by him. He caught up with Hee-won and told her they had to go the other way. She threw his arms aside in anger. Hee-won looked at Do-young and saw that he was somehow content and smiling. Do-jun is just in a good mood, but Hee-won's mood is not good and she asked him to stop laughing. He doesn't understand what it was that spoiled his wife's mood so much. She just wasn't happy to hear it. She didn't like the fact that her husband says he had no dating experience but still keeps bringing up some other woman. That's why she's not thrilled. Apparently Hee-won feels cheated. Except it's too late. Hee-won won't be able to leave Do-young. He confessed that he can't live without her. Hee-won gets a chill running down her back from these words. Hee-won stated that they are both responsible for Do-jun and that's why she doesn't plan to go anywhere. Do-jun had completely forgotten about something. Hee-won wondered exactly what Do-jun had forgotten about. But he didn't tell her. Do-young can't believe that Hee-won was able to run out without her purse like that. He was really worried about her since she left her phone at home. Especially since he knows that Hee-won is not good at navigating. She apologized, but argued that she was nauseous and didn't have time to think. He asked if she was nauseous now. Hee-won answered, no. Do-jun thought it might be toxicosis, but Hee-won wasn't sure about that. She reminded him once again that the smell of that paste was really nauseating. Do-young feels guilty about letting it happen. Hee-won wondered what Do-jun would do with Ha-in. If not for the teacher, he would have dealt with this problem 5 years ago. With a serious look on his face, he said she wouldn't get away with it this time. Oh, how tough and determined Do-jun is. Hee-won thinks it's time for them to change the topic of conversation. She goes back to their conversation about that woman in black. Hee-won assumes that Do-young didn't break up with her. Should he? Do-jun replied. Hee-won is outraged by this answer since he previously told her that he only dated young Hee-mi. She doesn't understand how many more lies he told her. Hee-won really wants to know who this girl is. Perhaps a celebrity. Or a model. Smiling, he replied that she's right beside him now. Next to her. Where? Looking around, Hee-won doesn't see anyone. And then Hee-won realized who Do-jun was talking about. She asked him to stop teasing her. Do-jun reminded her that Hee-won was wearing a little black dress that very night. That's right, the little black dress and that unforgettable night. At that moment, Do-jun put his arm around Hee-won's waist. Do-jun reminded her that she was gorgeous that night. He will never forget that. Oh, something is about to happen. Come on, kiss already. An old man passing by coughed to be noticed and muttered that young people were crazy these days. The kissing in the middle of the sidewalk. Do-jun decided to apologize for that and explained that it was just that his wife was so beautiful that he had completely forgotten that they were in the middle of the street. In response, the old man advised him to enjoy his youth, and he should hurry home to his wife. Do-young suggested going to the hotel. Oh, Hee-won blushed slightly because of her embarrassment. The next day at Di-woo's house, he had just taken a cool shower. Humming a song, he wiped his wet hair with a towel. Put some lotion on his face. In a great mood, Di-woo came out of the shower room. At this moment, Si-hong visited him, but she didn't expect to see Di-woo literally naked. They were both dumbfounded to see each other. Di-woo didn't expect her to come to see him, and Si-hoon didn't expect to see him like that. She dropped her phone from her hands and forgot what she wanted to say looking at Di-woo. Si-hong shouted loudly for him to put something on. Di-woo excitedly asked what she was doing in his house. Di-woo hastily began to put on his pants. The thing is, Mrs. Kim told Zai-han to go up to the second floor. Because of the rush, Di-woo accidentally bumped his head. It made Zai-han laugh. Di-woo asked her to close her eyes. Haha, Si-hong thinks there's nothing to look at and asked her to take her time. Di-woo asked Si-hoon to repeat his words. He was surprised at what Si-hong saw. Di-woo asked her if Si-hong had really had a good look. In fact, Si-hong was only joking and asked him not to take it so seriously. She noticed that he was clearly offended. Si-hong apologized and said that there was a lot to see, adding that Di-woo works out a lot and he has beautiful muscles. Si-hong got into a tizzy and remarked that Di-woo's abs are just like a washboard and poked her finger at him, adding that Di-woo looked even more gorgeous from behind. Di-woo at this point froze in place at Si-hong's words. He said nervously, "What?" Oh, Si-hong didn't know what to answer. She started making excuses and stepping back a bit toward the bed. Di-woo waved his hand and Si-hoon clumsily tripped and fell on the bed. Taking advantage of the moment, Di-woo climbed onto the bed as well. She wasn't expecting that. Silently looking into each other's eyes, without words. Apparently Di-woo really is in love with Zai-han. Zai-han only said Di-woo's name. Then she asked him to get off her. He quickly got off her and apologized for the incident. Di-woo asked Si-hong why she had come to him. She needed his help in math. He said he could help with math tomorrow, because he was very tired today. With a sad face, Si-hong replied, "Okay." Then she walked out of his room. She heard the door click. Di-woo sat down on the bed. Apparently he was puzzled about something, or rather someone. A little later, Si-hong came to the cafe where she met Hee-won. She's still in shock over what happened that morning at Di-woo's house. Si-hong told Hee-won everything. She was surprised that Si-hong just left without saying a word. What else could she have said? After all, he told her to leave. Hee-won now understood why Si-hoon looked like that all day and even at the family dinner. Si-hong admitted that this was the first time Di-woo had told her to leave. She came to see him around 11, but he wasn't home. It seems he had a change of plans or something. Si-hong thinks that Di-woo probably went to see Da-hee. She thinks that's quite strange, since she usually just calls him and that's it. But now she feels terribly uncomfortable doing so. Hee-won guesses why this is happening. It's because of love. Hee-won thinks that Seo-hoon should figure out how she feels about Di-woo on her own. Yeah, that's true, but the problem is that she doesn't know how she feels about Di-woo herself. She asks Hee-won, what if she likes Di-woo and he doesn't feel the same way? Then what should Si-hong do? Hee-won thinks about it and doesn't know what to answer. Hee-won is in no position to give advice, since she still hasn't figured out her own feelings. By the way, Hee-won never asked Do-jun what she wanted to know. A recall, she wanted to ask about the fact that he's still with her just out of a sense of responsibility. Also, is Hee-won only attracted to him physically? She recalls Do-young desperately trying to find her. She doesn't know why, but she feels so insecure. Hee-won also, like Si-hoon, realizes that she is in love with Do-young, but she doesn't even know what she will do if he doesn't feel the same way. Apparently this is what she fears. Hee-won thinks about how if it wasn't for the pregnancy, they probably wouldn't be together. Smiling, Hee-won said that they don't call this period the hardest one for nothing. Seo-hoon thought that wasn't funny. Since Hee-won has no answer for Si-hong, she decided to pay for dessert because the dessert here is really good. Si-hong wondered why Hee-won had decided to move in a day early. Her father told her that they were going to do it tomorrow. Hee-won replied that it just so happened. Hee-won's phone rang. Do-jun called and asked her what cafe they were at now. It's getting dark outside and he wants to pick her up. He asked, "Is this place near the green umbrella?" Hee-won started looking around for the green umbrella. She asked him a counter question, "Are you nearby yet?" Oh, Hee-won was surprised by the surprise. She saw Do-jun through the window talking to her on the phone. He looked at her, smiled, and waved. Hee-won seemed to shine with happiness and waved back as well. Seo-hoon thinks that Uncle Do-jun is a really cool guy. Seo-hoon reminded her that Hee-won and Do-jun are in the honeymoon phase right now. At this point, Hee-won became embarrassed. The next day at school, Hee-won is looking at the athletics schedule. She was surprised that she wasn't on the athletics list. Mr. Shin said that the vice principal told him to cross Hee-won off the list for obvious reasons. Hee-won might not have been able to participate in jump rope, but she would have been able to judge. There is nothing Mr. Shin can do about it, as the deputy's order is non-negotiable. Hee-won thinks this is fundamentally wrong. Nearby, her colleague Miss Choi says that Mrs. Jang is very lucky. Since Hee-won got married and is now relieved of all the hard work. And now it is because of her that Miss Choi thinks everyone else will have to work harder under the scorching sun. Miss Park is outraged that Miss Choi would allow herself to say such a thing. She also added that Mrs. Young is pregnant, which is why she is exempt from all the hard work. Ms. Park is outraged that the ethics teacher is behaving this way. Ms. Choi clarified that Mrs. Young was also exempt from judging. Therefore, she believes it is because Mrs. Young is the wife of the chairman. Miss Park clarified that Mrs. Young did not ask to be excused from any work at all. She also advised Miss Choi to be angry not with Mrs. Jang, but with the deputy, because that was his order. But Miss Choi feels that he was forced to do so. Ms. Park also reminded her that Mrs. Young is a pregnant woman. She was annoyed that Ms. Choi did not put in much effort, but complained too much. Finally, Miss Park said that if she were in Miss Choi's shoes, she would be ashamed to say she was an ethics teacher. Miss Choi listened to all this and left. You can see that she is grumpy and unhappy. Miss Park doesn't understand, so why is Miss Choi acting this way? Hee-won returns home after work. She reflects on the fact that it is getting harder and harder to work at school. Hee-won realizes that there is a lot of miscommunication between her and the other teachers. As a result, she contemplates taking a leave of absence. But she can't go on maternity leave now. Maybe she should just go. Right now Do-jun came home. He noticed that Hee-won seemed to be upset about something. She replied that everything was fine. Hee-won cried, "Not really okay." Do-jun wants to know what Hee-won is upset about. Hee-won decides to go rest on the couch. Do-jun watches her from the sidelines. He doesn't want Hee-won to worry right now, so he needs to find out the reason. The next day, Do-young drops Hee-won off at school. She is still thinking about the fact that even if it's hard, she can't leave school that easily. Hee-won decides that she needs to hold out a little longer. Do-young thought Hee-won had some kind of strange look in her eyes. She looks like she's going to war. Hee-won was happy about this, because this time she won't let things slide. Do-jun didn't understand these words. She said, "Never mind, forget it." Do-young wants to know the details, but Hee-won is in no hurry to tell him, since it's just school stuff. A little things he doesn't need to know. Do-young is very curious, but since Hee-won thinks he doesn't need to know, then fine. She begs Do-jun's forgiveness without a word. She feels like she's complaining when she talks to him about what's going on at school. And so they had already pulled up in front of the school. Do-young asked if Hee-won had applied sunscreen. Yes, she did, and she applied a lot of it. He asked her not to run around and take it easy. She replied that she wouldn't have it any other way thanks to Do-jun. Do-jun doesn't understand, is that a bad thing? Hee-won replied that it's not bad, but it makes her uncomfortable. But he shouldn't worry about it since Do-jun needs to go to work. Hee-won is sure that Secretary Lee is already waiting for him. Do-jun leaned over to Hee-won and kissed her on the lips. She liked it, she blushed. Hee-won gets out of the car and into the school. Do-jun asked Hee-won one last question. He asked if she had to dress like this. She asked Do-jun, does she look weird? He replied, no. In fact, it was her class shirt. She told him that she needed to wear it. Since she can't participate, she will try to uphold the spirit of the class. Do-jun agreed. They waved to each other and after work, Do-jun picks her up in his car. He sees her off with a look. Do-jun looked at the back seat where something was lying around. A bag of some stuff. I wonder what kind of bag it is. D-Han, a high school track and field competition. This is where they jump rope. They have team races. They also wrestle. Hee-won blew her whistle. She praised the kids for their good work and embraced that the 7th grade wins. By the way, Hee-won talked the deputy into letting her at least judge how hot it is outside. Hee-won suddenly saw Miss Choi. She remarked that the weather was quite hot as for spring. Hee-won asked Miss Choi to leave as it was her place. She agreed as Miss Young needs to sit down. She apologizes wildly for this. Of course, Miss Choi couldn't keep quiet and said it must be great to be pregnant since everything is for you. Hee-won seemed to think that Miss Choi was jealous of her because she had such a husband. Ms. Choi resented that Ms. Young could be so rude. Ms. Choi also clarified that she plans to marry the man she will love first. Hee-won asked if Miss Choi has such a man in mind. She said she was sure she would find one soon. Hee-won didn't think so because she thought that with a character like Miss Choi's, it would be hard for her to find a man she loved. Miss Choi did not understand these words. Hee-won added that Miss Choi is cruel and mean-spirited and talks behind other people's backs. Hee-won reminded her that she said that Hee-won only got married because she got pregnant and that she would be kicked out as soon as the baby was born. Hee-won doesn't understand if Miss Choi is so worried about her, so why didn't she come up and tell her personally? Recall that earlier, Miss Choi was discussing Hee-won and her pregnancy in the teacher's lounge. She then told her that she didn't believe that Mrs. Young and Chairman Kang's marriage was real. Hee-won took her time to get close to Miss Choi and quietly whispered that Miss Choi should try to get better. In response, Miss Choi did not say a word to Hee-won. Miss Choi seems to think that Hee-won thinks she is better than others. She hopes Hee-won stumbles. And at that moment it was as if she had tripped. Hee-won didn't see it and tripped. It feels like Miss Choi did it on purpose. Hee-won would have fallen just a little bit more. But someone caught her. She exhaled. She thanked herself for her help. Oh my god. It was Do-jun himself. Hee-won didn't expect to see him here. Come on, no one expected to see him here, wow. Hee-won had been looking upset for the past couple of days. Do-jun has asked her the reason more than once, but she always answers that everything is fine. He tries to be close to her, but it's like she keeps Do-young at arm's length. It is as if an invisible wall has formed between them. He realized that it was hard for her to share her thoughts and problems with others. Do-jun didn't want to pressure her, but he couldn't just sit and wait either. It got to the point where he couldn't imagine his life without her. That's why Do-jun decided to find a way to break down this wall with his old ways. That's actually why he ended up at school in this costume. It was a big surprise for Hee-won to see him here. Hee-won didn't understand what he was doing here. He replied. He took the day off, but he didn't tell her that this morning. Do-young decided that it would be better to surprise Hee-won. He thought she wasn't happy to see him, but she wasn't at all. She is very happy to see her husband. Do-young had previously asked Hee-won not to overdo it, but she was already overheated. He turned his attention to Miss Choi. Looking at Miss Choi, he told Hee-won to be careful as she almost fell over. Do-jun's hunch was confirmed and he was right. Hee-won was upset about her work. By the way, at first he thought Hee-won was upset about Hee-in, but she was arrested for breaking and entering, and Hee-won didn't seem to care about it since they moved in. So Do-jun assumed that the problem was work-related. He called Secretary Lee. Do-jun warned that he needed to go to Hee-won's school today. He was willing to attend if it would help him understand what had upset her so much. Moreover, he heard Miss Choi and Hee-won talking while they were on the athletic field. He heard absolutely everything and that Miss Choi was planning to marry the man she would love. However, Do-jun had no idea what Hee-won was facing. Hee-won doesn't understand where Do-jun got the shirt. He had his assistant and it was Miss Park. She saw Hee-won and Do-jun walking toward her. Miss Park waved to them and they nodded their heads in response. The principal and vice principal were shocked that Chairman Khan visited their school without an announced visit. Chairman Khan said that teacher Jang had said that she was going to compete and he was worried about her situation. Apparently he should have informed the principal about it. However, Chairman Kang did not want to worry anyone unnecessarily. Principal Park replied that there was no problem. He also said that it was an honor for their school to see Chairman Kang. As Do-jun visited the school, he offered Principal Park lunch. He of course accepted the offer and told him that he would share the news. Do-jun said, "Yes, of course." He looked at the ethics teacher and asked Hee-won what this teacher's name was. Hee-won pretended not to hear the question right away. Then she said, "Miss Jang Hee-choi." Do-jun would appreciate it if Miss Choi would tell the other teachers about tonight's dinner. And asked her, "You don't have a problem with that, do you?" She replied, "No, of course not." Do-young started waving to keep Hee-won from getting hot. He also asked if she wanted something to drink. She replied, "That's fine." Do-jun asked if she was hot. Should he wave faster? She said, "No need." The principal, his deputy, and the ethics teacher hear Chairman Kang showing concern for Mrs. Jang. Doesn't sound like a fake marriage at all. Ms. Choi said she didn't say that. But she was reminded of how she grumbled about it last time. Miss Choi wonders if Chairman Kang heard her conversation with Hee-won. She really hopes that he hasn't. Hee-won asked Do-young to stop calling her that. How exactly? She also asked him not to pretend like he didn't understand her. She's excited enough as it is because of his unexpected appearance. Hee-won told her that it made her feel a strange tingling sensation. Do-jun smiled and said he didn't mind her tingling. What's with Hee-won's mood? She got up from her chair. Do-young asked where she was going. She went to class since jump rope is about to start. Do-jun also got up from his chair. Hee-won wondered why he stood up. Perhaps he was going to leave. Actually, no. He wants to compete. Hee-won is shocked. She told Do-jun that if he's not leaving, then let him sit back down. Do-jun can't, since he's replacing Hee-won today. You could see by the look on his face that Hee-won wasn't happy. She asked why is he here. Do-jun replied that he said earlier that he took the day off. He told her that he really missed his wife and didn't want to spend the whole day at home alone. Hee-won suspected that there was something wrong here. She thought about Do-jun being a liar. She knows he's always busy working. The winner is 7th grade. Congratulations. After the competition, they visited a restaurant together. Chairman Kang was thanked for participating in the jump rope and for inviting them to dinner. Principal Park asked Do-jun Kang to sit at the table with them. He replied that it was fine and he wanted to sit next to teacher Jang. Since it was a casual dinner, Mr. Pak asked Chairman Kang to say a few words. Do-jun declined to do so. But everyone asked to say a few words before we start. Eventually Do-jun agreed and said he would be brief. Everyone present rejoiced at this. He wants to say a few words as Teacher Jang's husband. Since he didn't come here today as chairman. Frankly, Do-jun said that he often worries that he has made Teacher Jang uncomfortable because of his status. That is why he sometimes asks her how things are going at school. He noticed that Hee-won is very careful about what she says. After scratching his head, Do-jun apologized for not being able to resist saying those words after marrying such a beautiful woman. Haha, you can see that Hee-won is a little displeased. Shy, perhaps. As her husband, Do-jun would like to make a request of everyone. He doesn't want Teacher Young to be treated differently just because she is my wife. Be it better or worse. He hopes everyone hears him. She is still a teacher like everyone else. Hee-won, well, say that Do-jun is good,